You're listening to the Breece Creator Podcast. I'm Lee Breece. Get ready for this one. It's another great episode. Motors, mottos, and more. Not to be discouraged no matter what the heck you do with your life, amateur or expert. We've got a great show just for you. Listen in the entire time to hear me speak nonstop, great stories, and quite possibly a funny joke or two. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and start off by saying that if you've listened to this podcast before, you've heard me complain about it, you've heard me talk about it, you've heard me say tons of things about not being able to find a motor in the trash, a decent one that is. I'm not talking about a vacuum or a fan motor. You know, you see fans and vacuums and all that crap out there in the trash all the time. I'm talking about a real motor from like a blower or a pump, or from a table saw or a tool or anything. And I tell you, I was driving to the radio station to work from after school on Wednesday, and I looked to my left at one of the intersections when I had to stop at one of those stupid stop signs that's in the middle of the stretch. And I found what I think is an industrial, or it's a furnace blower. I think it's a furnace blower. I'm not really sure, but it had this big housing on it. It had a blower in it and a bunch of other computer parts and some smaller blowers. But finally found one, took it apart, and it's only a third horsepower, but even a third horsepower motor is like $50 or $60, maybe even more than that, $150 brand new. So in my opinion, definitely a good find, even though it's not what I need to power my bandsaw. It's still really cool. It's really awesome. I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of the crap that I had to get off it. I had to take the blower enclosure off, the computer. There's a bunch of other crap that came with it. I'll have a picture of what I found in the show notes for this episode on our website, so you can look at it. But like I said, definitely a great find. Not sure I'm going to use it for, but anyway. As far as the bandsaw is concerned, though, what I'm actually operating it with right now is a third horsepower motor. I want to upgrade to a horsepower at least, because I want to be able to do some significant resawing with it, and the third horsepower just doesn't get it running fast enough. It's only running at about maybe 13 or 1400 RPM, and it's only a third horsepower, so even sometimes trying to resaw a 2x4 or 2x6 gets a little bit tough. So like I said, trying to improve that a little bit. Hopefully I'll find something down the road. There's always crap on Craigslist, but A, you have to have money, and B, it's something you have to be actively pursuing, and it's not something I need right now, so I'm not actively pursuing it right now. So this past week, actually it was a week ago from tomorrow, so last Saturday, my uncle invited me up to a Pheasant Forever dinner up in Clinton County, Indiana, which is 2 counties north of me. It's Frankfort, actually. It was at the fairgrounds. And I had not been to a Pheasant Forever dinner, let alone did I know what Pheasants Forever was. He told me in the car that it's just like Ducks Unlimited, but I've not heard of Ducks Unlimited either. You know, I say I live in the countryside. Not really. Like I said, I live outside of Brownsburg, which is a suburb, but I don't live far enough to be in the middle of nowhere. And technically, since I go to school in Brownsburg, I do all my shopping in Brownsburg and whatnot, I would technically still consider myself a suburban kid. I'm not a redneck or anything by any means. So I don't hunt, I don't hang out in the woods, I don't go fishing. I love doing that stuff, but I've never been hunting, I've never been fishing. So something I'll do eventually. I'm not a clean kid. I'm not a prick. I mean, I garden, I work for farmers, I do all that stuff that you do in the country, just not at that level. Anyway, more about the Pheasant Forever dinner. So I go there having no idea what to expect. I'm expecting what I thought it was going to be was like a bunch of old guys sitting around a table with some, taxidermied pheasants, just to look at, and they talk about the good old days, have some paintings, and they have some artifacts and stuff like that. But this is actually their one fundraiser that they had a year. I'm not going to endorse them or say go give them money or anything, but the event I thought was really well organized. As a kid who's done fundraising for school events, trying to raise money for Riley Children's Hospital, some local organizations, the Education Foundation, NHS, Key Club, all that crap. This event was like by far, in my opinion, one of the best ways to do fundraising. And what was really surprising is that the Pheasants Forever is a group that is trying to preserve the habitat and trying to increase the population of pheasants. And pheasants are absolutely gorgeous birds. They're beautiful. I think the term is, I don't know, I think they're red-necked or red-headed or something like that. But they're also really tasty too if you hunt them and make them up for stew. It's actually kind of a funny story. So I went to visit a general up at Quantico Marine Corps base as I was thinking about applying to NRTC Marine Corps, and then also I was going to go to the Naval Academy. And it just so happened that my uncle has a distant relative who's a general in the Marine Corps, and we went up there, visited with him at Quantico, stayed at his house, got a tour of Quantico, went up to Annapolis to see the academy, and a lot of other cool experiences, which was really awesome. But this general, knows people across the country, and so he goes hunting with them. He'll call them up and go spend a week in Dakota or Montana or wherever because he goes hunting. He brings, this guy is a guy who's moved in the last 20 years, he's probably moved 31 times. And so his house really isn't that full of furniture. There's not that much stuff in there. He doesn't have a lot of clutter. But you open his fridge, and his fridge is full of pheasant meat and other animal meat and deer meat and some other stuff. I don't really know what all the different types of meats are because I don't go hunting, but he was that kind of guy. And so every night, he made us a different stew, like pheasant stew and deer stew and some other stews. I don't know. They were all really good. I can't complain. I mean, they were all fabulous. I mean, for a guy who cooks himself and still works a long work day, I mean, they were absolutely fabulous stews. So anyway, back to the Pheasants Forever thing. So pheasant hunting is a big thing, and so the Pheasants Forever groups are trying to save the pheasants. I'll have more information about Pheasants Forever. They haven't been around quite as long. If you're familiar with Ducks Unlimited, they haven't been around quite as long as they have, but nonetheless, still equal group. But anyway, so this event was a dinner for all of the members of Pheasants Forever. So if you were a member, if you were a big donor, you were invited to come. You had to pay for your meal, and you had to buy raffle tickets. Then there was a silent auction, there was a live auction, and some other stuff. But really, I mean, the raffle tickets were just like, they were very, very generous in terms of amount. Like if you ever go to Disney World, everybody gets fast passes. You don't pay for fast passes anymore. Everybody gets fast passes, or at least that's the way it was when I went there 4 years ago now. I went there on a band trip my freshman year. Time flies. I'm not sure if that's the way it is at Disney now. I'm sure it's not. But anyway, so the raffle tickets, I mean, they gave you a ton. They gave you an arm's length for like $1 or whatever. So there was a ton of raffle tickets for the various items they were raffling off. And the thing I liked about the raffle is that they didn't necessarily raffle off individual items. They would raffle off packages of items. So like you would get a gift card, a jacket, a shirt, hat, dog food, accessories, artillery, whatever. They just gave you a bunch of stuff in this one package. My uncle, he was a donor, so he's a member and a donor. So he got a lot of raffle tickets, and he put them all in one bucket to get this. I think it was a hunting shirt, and some other stuff, a hat and gift card and whatever. But he didn't get it. But he put one in each bucket, and there's like 15 different packages they're raffling off. And he actually won the package that had a weed whacker. So he won with one ticket, probably out of 500 or 600 tickets that were in that bucket. So that's kind of interesting. But most of the things that were actually raffled off, probably of those, was guns. I think that's to be expected. But what's interesting is that the culture here in the suburbs and the city is really against guns, and I think that's also because not just the fact that people are just I want to say anti-Second Amendment. They don't, anybody who owns a gun in the suburbs or in the city owns it for self-protection. People who are probably Lebanon and beyond own guns because they want to hunt. And so they had rifles and shotguns. I learned all these cool things about guns because I didn't know before, which is really cool. I didn't know the difference between a shotgun and a rifle. I know that now. I know the difference between the 20 gauge and the 12 gauge. Had a lot of great conversations about guns, which was unique in itself. But they probably, I want to say, raffled off including the live auction. They probably got rid of 20 guns. And what was cool about the live auction is that they didn't like auction off the gun. They would auction off a piece of it. What they did is they sold hats, and each hat, like I said, was if you bought the hat, you had an opportunity to get the gun. So these 10 people all lined up at the end because they all paid $100 to get a hat to be in the drawing for the gun, and they draw the person for the gun. And I tell you, it seems like this happens all the time. It's never the person who looks like they could most use or be most appropriate to earn the item. And so, you got 9 guys up there and one, little 13-year-old girl, and of course she wins the $600 rifle. I don't know. But that event was really fun. And I think the way that they did the fundraising and the fact that, everybody could walk away with something almost, but you could still earn a lot of money by selling raffle tickets, and obviously had to pay for the dinner, and they had the live auction. They also had a silent auction for a bunch of stuff. To me, that's a really great way to make an enjoyable fundraising event, because to me the fundraising that I've always done has been we're selling t-shirts, we're trying to get people to buy our wristband or buy our cookies. This is an event. And plus the other thing too that's really big with fundraisers, it's all about your personalities. So the guys behind the Pheasants Forever group were not a bunch of 60 plus guys. There were some, but the majority of these guys are probably, there were a lot of young guys in their 20s, and there was I think the MC was in his 40s, and these guys were really energetic. They were into it. They really got the people excited, which is really what it takes to put on a great fundraising event. And to me, it was really nice to get out of the suburban mindset. It was really nice to get away because, the thing is about Brownsburg, I love it to death. I've grown up here. I'm born and raised. I have a lot of friends here. But just the communication between the school corporation, the citizens, the businesses, the town government, it flat out sucks. The communication is absolutely terrible because the people don't really care about one another. Half the people that live here work downtown, so there's not that kind of connection. People don't do things together here. Everyone's here for a different purpose. There's people who have been born here who hate the fact that the town's changing so rapidly. There's people who have moved in just to go to the schools. There's all of this crazy suburban development with houses and they're building new roads and stuff like that. And so, like I said, everyone's here for a different purpose. And when you deal with that kind of town, that kind of vibe, it's really refreshing to go up to a place where that's not present. So the place that the Pheasants Forever dinner was at the fairgrounds in Clinton County, which is Frankfort, Indiana, which is Frankfort and Lebanon, which are 2 towns that I visit frequently, are very similar. They're the county seats of their county. They're small cities. Population's probably between 40 and 50,000. There's a lot of people there. People in Frankfort, there's a lot of Hispanics there because there's some huge factories. So a lot of people work there and move there for the factories because there's a great job opportunity and job markets for that. But I love the towns with the town square and the family-owned restaurants and businesses. That and the really great thing about Lebanon and Frankfort is that they have like the old district part of town, and then they have the new. New is too nice of a word. They have the garbage district, the junk food district. There you go. That's a good term. Junk food district. That's where they have the McDonald's and the Walmart and the Dollar Tree and the Speedways and all those businesses that are really corporate and commercial. So it's really nice to see that separation. That, and one of the things my dad would always say when we go up to Lebanon is how timeless Lebanon is, because he remembers the town square in Lebanon when he was a kid, and he would talk about it when we would go there. Is that it never changed. It was exactly the same. None of the businesses changed. It was really great. And my dad and I used to both go get our haircuts at a place in Lebanon by Ed. Ed is the quickest barber you will ever meet. He can cut anybody's hair in probably 5 to 6 minutes, and he will probably cut 200 people's hair on any given Saturday. And the people love him too. He's a really nice guy. This is his retirement job, so it's not like he's trying to screw you. He's there to make it enjoyable. The guys love him. Everybody loves him. But because I'm a busy guy, I end up just going to some place in Brownsburg. And plus, Ed is a barber, so he doesn't really do much styling. I'm not saying I style my hair, but I do. I don't know. I need scissor cut. Ed doesn't do scissor cutting. He just takes the comb, the snippers, whatever you want to call them, and just goes up and down your hair. But what I'm kind of realizing when I went to this town, it's kind of like I had a big epiphany or maybe a realization is that, there's so many people that I just don't like in Brownsburg. And I kind of realized this when my uncle was actually talking about how much he hates Lebanon. I actually kind of like Lebanon, but he lives north of Lebanon. He kind of lives in between Frankfurt and Lebanon, and he said he just never really connected with a lot of people in Lebanon. There's some great people there. He admits that he loves. There's actually a lot of the churches there he loves. He's been to several of the churches, a lot of the businesses, but he just never really connected with Lebanon. And hearing him talk about it last weekend is really when I kind of realized the same thing about my hometown. Is that I felt the same way. There's not a lot of people I connected with. I felt like I identified with. The funny thing is that actually a lot of my friends live within 4 or 5 miles of me, which we all live in the middle of nowhere on the north side of town. So it's kind of interesting how that all worked out. So I don't know. I always thought I would grow up and be a city kid and go there for the opportunity and be able to walk everywhere and do that and whatnot. But I don't know. I realize that I want a sense of community where the people love each other, they connect with each other, they do things with each other. And the great thing about a place like that is that if there's a problem in the town, it's everybody's problem. It's not like you can just say, well, let me go complain to the town manager or the mayor, and let me go file a complaint, and then we'll see what happens. It's like when you generally have a concern, it's everybody's problem. Everybody wants to see it through and help you out and be there for you, and everybody has barbecues and whatnot. Everybody gets together, and it was a really awesome experience. And I went to the park in Frankfurt. I can't remember the name of it, but it was packed. It was full. I mean, there were kids playing everywhere. Now, obviously, it was really warm. That's really the weird thing about this year in February is that it's Midwest Indiana, and it's been almost 65 degrees plus almost every day of February, which has been really weird. I mean, you should have seen school this past week. I mean, you would have thought it was May. The kids are short sleeves, shorts. People are starting to get tan. It just really seemed kind of weird. But you go to Brownsburg, the park is dead. None of the small businesses exist anymore. A lot of the big buildings, or I want to say big old buildings, have been torn down to put in like CVS and Walgreens and Walmart and all that stuff, which is really kind of disappointing because I like that old small town feel. So I think I'm kind of starting to realize the difference between a suburban town and a small town. I think I'm starting to learn that I like small town. Kind of like that John Mellencamp song, Small Town. I'm thinking I'm going to be a small town guy. I just don't know what that means, especially because I want to get into politics and business. I don't know how that's going to turn, how all this is going to come down. I don't know. Maybe there's some opportunity out there in some of the smaller cities across Indiana, but I mean, a lot of them are really self-sufficient. So you don't really need to go to a big city like Indianapolis or Chicago or Detroit or Louisville to get some of the opportunities that you need. Something else I kind of realized, too, that I thought I'd go ahead and share is that, I asked for some feedback on this podcast last week, and I'm getting a lot of the same thing, is that they think it's great. They think the length is okay. They don't mind it being longer, but the half-an-hour format works for them. But what's interesting is that I'm getting the comment that I'm getting over and over again is that people are saying that I sound a lot older than I say I am, which... I whether that's a compliment or an insult, thank you. It's always nice as a young person to sound a little bit more mature. But I thought about that a little bit more this week and I was trying to figure out why I always feel like that, because I've gotten that compliment, or not that compliment, I've gotten that comment several times throughout my life, and I hear people talk about it a lot, especially when I talk to adults. They just see a different maturity, I guess. I don't know. And I thought about it a lot more. I looked at the people around me and especially being a high school senior and turning 18, and now I'm starting to look back and start to differentiate childhood from adulthood. I'm kind of like crossing that line right now, and so I'm able to kind of think and look back and and reflect about, say, my childhood's over now. I can start to analyze or remember certain different aspects about it. And I came to the consensus that the reason that is that I seem or maybe appear so much older is that I never wanted to be a kid. I always wanted to be an adult. I aspired to be older. I aspired to be mature. I wanted to achieve. I wanted to accomplish. I didn't come home and play video games. I didn't even ask for video games for Christmas. I didn't want candy. I didn't want to. I actually loved playing in the park when I was little, but I didn't really want to do a lot of the things that kids did, and I never really settled for being a kid. I never really was okay with, I made a mess. Now I'm just gonna, because I'm a kid, I'm just gonna walk away from it and make more messes and do whatever I want. I always wanted to be someone who inspired others and was a role model for others. I wanted to learn how to accomplish. I wanted to learn how to be a man, how to be an adult, be an exemplary. I wanted to be someone in society. I didn't want to be someone who was insignificant. And I think that's a lot of the reason why, if you sit me down in a room, I'm more likely to lean towards the more mature elders in the room than I am the people my age, just because I can't learn. I don't want to say I can't, but just the way my mind works, I feel like I'm more likely to learn something from people who have experienced more than me than I am people who are my age. And I think this whole idea of that my brain operates like a business person, like I've talked about before, it is a real thing. I think, I've always wanted to be able to make better. Like I said, I've always wanted to be like my dad in terms of my ability and my skills with woodworking. I've always wanted to be able to solve my own problems and do things like that. And, and when I look around a room, I always look around and try to find the person who's going to most benefit me, just like a business person would. You could say that's selfish. You could say there's something immoral about that, but that's just how my mind's always worked. And I say that, and I bring up an example is that I changed schools when I was in elementary school. So at the end of 5th grade, I transferred from a private school to a public school, and actually I had a friend who lived down the street from me who went to the public school I was about to go to, and him and I, we were friends at the time. We've kind of had a falling out, but we were friends then, and we were friends when I started going to school there. But when you go to a new school, you try to make new friends, and I think I'm fairly decent at that and always have been. But immediately I try to find people. It's not even a conscious idea. It was subconscious. I just immediately connected with an individual who's now probably one of my greatest friends, if not my greatest friend, who is extremely good at math. It was from 6th grade on, him and I became really good friends, and I suck at math. And so he's always been there to help me, and I dare say I would not be in calculus or physics or any of the advanced science and math classes that I've taken without him. There's no way I would be as smart as I am now without him. It's interesting how that happens. That, and I had a really good friend in elementary school who was the librarian's kid, which is always really also very beneficial. And then I'm also, one of my closest friends is the band director's son, and I really wanted to be drum major when I was in high school, so that really paid off as well. So it's really interesting to see how this subconscious mindset is really how kind of changed and altered and affected the way that I think and how my life's gone. And I don't know, that's just I've always found a way to connect with somebody that's going to matter to me later. I'm not saying I chose somebody over somebody else, but I just gravitated and I connected with people better who were going to be beneficial to me later on. It's not like I just shoved somebody down who I didn't feel like it was going to help me out. That's just how my friends evolved. And the people that want to be a teenager, that want to be a kid for forever, I know tons of people who are even in their 30s who you just look at them and they're just forever 21. And there's kids like that in high school that I feel like are going to be like that, and I just don't connect with them. I like being mature. I want to accomplish. I want to contribute something to society. I don't want to sit around and just be a kid for forever, for lack of a better term. And kind of with making and creating, that's kind of something that I've always done too. Like I said, I've always wanted to be as good as my dad, and and after watching a lot of the online makers and creators, and I've watched how-to videos, and I just see the mindset and the skill level of some of the most advanced makers that are out there online, and it's absolutely crazy to try to fathom ever being as good as them. But because I've had this mindset for forever that I want to be like them, it's actually starting to happen. My brain started to develop enough to the point where I can actually be as good or better than some of these makers and creators out there. But I've been inspired a lot. I've had a lot of those people out there that I'm talking about that inspired me, make me better, and contribute to my continuing education in the maker area. In other news for this podcast, I actually wanted to make a sign for the podcast, and I actually posted a picture of the sign on the Breece Creator Podcast Instagram, because one of the things that some of the makers have gotten into online is making signs, and I noticed that a lot of the things that people need to make signs is a bandsaw. So now that I finally have a bandsaw, I thought, well, why don't I try out and make a sign? So I made a sign for this podcast, and actually, this kind of happened accidentally or coincidentally, or no intention whatsoever. But the logo that I designed for this podcast and for Breece Woodworking is actually relatively simple to make. It's just two pieces of wood with letters on it. I say it's simple, but it really wasn't. But the design is simple, but it sends a clear message. And that's something I've learned about marketing and branding, is that you have to have something that's clear, concise, and the instant you see it, you know exactly what the message is. So obviously you see the wood in the sign, and that you instantly feel like, well, this is a woodworking thing, or it's something to do with wood, which, yeah, Breece Woodworking is more about woodworking, but this podcast is more about creating what inspires me, my ability to inspire others to be creators. But when you see the logo, I mean, it sends a clear message about what the mission is, what the goals are, what it's about, and stuff like that. But the thing is about the sign, I say it's a simple design, but it really, making letters isn't as simple as you think. Obviously, I had to design all of the letters. I had to design the sign. I had to make sure all the dimensions were going to work out in terms of centering and marks and all stuff like that. I had to cut out the letters on the bandsaw, so I printed out the letters 1-to-1 size of what they were going to be when I put them on the piece of wood, and I cut them out and put them on plywood and cut them out with the bandsaw, which actually took probably an hour to an hour and a half to cut out every single letter. That and the font that I have for this podcast logo has actually relatively thin letters. I used a really cheap plywood, so I had to glue a lot of things back together, but I think the sign came out great. It actually worked out really well, but that's not what takes forever. What takes forever is the sanding and the finishing. So I'm looking at the sign right now. It actually hangs above the desk where I record this, and the letters, they're really clear when you look at a picture or you stand about 5 feet or more away, but the closer you get, you can still see the bandsaw marks and stuff from cutting it, and I tried the best I could to clean them up with a file and some sandpaper, but it didn't. It came out clean, but it didn't come out clean. I mean, you can see on the podcast letters that you can definitely see the bandsaw marks a little easier because it's white, but on the black, that's what I painted the Breece Creator part. You can kind of see it, but not as much. But that took forever. That probably took 4 or 5 hours, yeah, maybe more than that, of sanding, of trying to clean them all up, which are really, real intricate shapes, and you have to use different tools. And I don't know. If I were to make a sign again, I really can't think of a better way to do it, other than I could probably use some more power tools. I have a belt sander, a standard table belt sander, but I don't have a strip sander, which is, it's got a thin, probably inch and a half strip. That's all exposed, so you can cut intricate shapes around it where you can't really do that with a belt sander. That would probably have made the process of cleaning up these letters a lot quicker, but I don't have that. But Matthias Wandel actually has one of those that he made and designed, and so that's actually something I already wanted to make, so I might do that at some point. I don't know, but I really hope that people see the sign and understand that it's really, once you have the basic tools and the basic hand skills, that you can really make a sign for your business, for yourself. You see all these signs at Michael's and Goodwill all the time. I hope people are inspired to make their own sign by the fact that I've not cut any letters out on the bandsaw before, so this is my first attempt at cutting letters out. I think it turned out really, really good. So like I said, hopefully others see how easy it is and can do it themselves. So before I close the podcast, I want to say thank you to everyone who gave us feedback on the podcast last week. We appreciate all of the feedback you can give us, comments, messages, DMs, whatever. I need all the feedback I can get to make this podcast as good as possible. But actually, so for the first time, I've actually released a set of plans on the Breece Woodworking page for the paper tray that I have available on Etsy. So the paper tray that I designed was for my desk. I made one for my sister. I made one for my mom. I've made a ton. I keep selling them on Etsy. It's actually been a really hot item. I really want to go back, though, to my core mission of inspiring others to be creators and being makers themselves. So obviously, people who want a paper tray will buy one and get one for themselves, but I want people to experience the same power that I did when I made my paper tray, in that I was able to solve my own problem and get something that made my life a lot better. So I've actually made a set of plans that are available on Breece Woodworking's Etsy page that you can check out for some history, some background about the paper tray, how to build it, the dimensions and the plans. It's a complete set. It's actually, I think, 9 or 10 pages long of information about the paper tray that I made. I tried to think about everything that has to do with this tray, inspiration, the plans, the details, everything I could think of, and I put it into a PDF file. It's available for sale on Etsy for only $5. I really want to be able to support myself, and actually, since I'm going to be going to Purdue next year, I need to try to save up as much money as I can for college. So any of the funds that are developed from my Etsy page go directly to my college fund. So if you want to support me there, I would appreciate that very much. In addition to supporting the cause of trying to make everybody understand the power of their hands and the fact that they can be a creator and be a maker. In the outro of this podcast, I want to feature an artist who has released their music into the public domain. Artists who release their music into the public domain, I feel like, understand what art is and how it contributes to the world around it. So I'm going to end the third episode of the Breece Creator Podcast with I Don't Know by Grapes. Anything you could possibly want to know about the song and this episode are in the show notes on the website at breecewoodworking.wixsite.com/creatorpodcast. If you're on iTunes, please rate or review I'd love to hear the feedback you have, and it would help the show get in front of more people. Please share the podcast with a buddy and subscribe, like this episode, leave a comment, or send a comment via email to breececreatorpodcast@gmail.com. You can also tweet at us on Twitter or follow us on Instagram. We are starting a live feed now where if you tune into Instagram 3 o'clock every Friday, you can witness a live recording of the podcast. I'm Lee Breece. I'll see you next time on the Breece Creator Podcast.